Hey everyone, and welcome back to The Explainer. This one is designed specifically for all you focus learners out there who are ready to unpack another truly incredible story. Okay, let's jump right into this. Today we're looking at one of the most dramatic corporate comeback stories ever told. We are talking about the resurrection of a brand that has practically defined childhood creativity for entire generations, Lego. But as you'll see, this isn't just a story about toys. It's actually this brilliant masterclass in what happens when a massive company completely forgets its purpose and the agonizing, structurally painful decisions it takes to pull it back from the brink of total destruction. So let's set the scene. Picture this, it's the winter of 2003, and inside Lego's headquarters in Billund, Denmark, the atmosphere is just incredibly bleak. You've got executives sitting in a boardroom, and they are staring at a staggering, absolutely grim number, $800 million. That's the amount of debt hanging over the company. The numbers on the page weren't just bad, they were completely existential. And you know, the daily, terrifying reality of that debt wasn't just a static mountain of money owed. The company was bleeding close to $1 million every single day. I mean, just sit with that for a second. Every time the sun set, another $1 million of capital simply vanished. They were literally hemorrhaging cash, and time was rapidly running out. The momentum of this collapse was just staggering. Over the span of a single decade leading up to 2003, sales had fallen by a massive 30%. This globally beloved childhood brand was quietly on a countdown to either a radical transformation or a very slow, humiliating end. They'd reached a breaking point where those executives had to ask the only question that actually mattered. How do you save a company that forgot what it was for? Well, to answer that, we need to pivot the narrative a bit. Section 1, the original promise. Let's go back to 1932. Because to truly understand how a global toy company gets to the edge of an $800 million cliff, you actually have to go back more than 70 years. In 1932, a guy named Ole Kirk Christensen opened a modest carpentry workshop in a small town in Denmark. He was building wooden toys by hand. He built his entire business slowly, relying solely on unglamorous, hard-earned craftsmanship and word of mouth. There was no plastic brick yet, no global empire, just a carpenter working in his shop. And the name he chose for his company, it was no accident. Lego is a contraction of the Danish phrase leggut, which directly translates to play well. This wasn't some catchy slogan dreamed up by a modern marketing department, right? It was a quiet, enduring promise stitched directly into the company's name from day one. It was a core philosophy about exactly what the product was supposed to do for the kid holding it. And for decades, that simple promise was entirely enough. But things changed, and the company lost its way. Section 2, a decade of drift and chasing the wrong growth. By the 1990s and into the early 2000s, Lego's leadership started chasing growth in pretty much every direction except the one that actually built the company. We're talking video games, branded apparel, entire theme parks. The single most recognizable interlocking brick on the planet became just one product line, competing for attention and investment against all these completely unrelated ventures. Now, individually, maybe each expansion looked defensible in a boardroom presentation, but collectively, they completely diluted the core brand and just hollowed the company out. And the physical, operational cost of that drift was catastrophic. When you compare the singular original promise of the interlocking brick to what the product catalog ballooned into, it was more than 13,000 unique parts. 13,000. Every isolated decision to expand added up to an almost incomprehensible level of manufacturing bloat. Somewhere in that massive, sprawling catalog, the very thing that made Lego valuable in the first place was diluted almost past recognition. It really became a classic case of mistaking more for better and letting a decade of unfocused decisions dilute a brand. It is so easy to skip past this part of the story, but we need to be totally honest about it. Lego didn't fail because of a shifting market they couldn't predict, and they didn't fail because of bad luck. This was a self-inflicted wound. It was a decade of leadership completely losing track of their own identity. Which leads us to the thrilling turning point. Section 3, back to the brick. The turnaround strategy. The turnaround didn't come from a flashy new product or some expensive ad campaign. It came from a new CEO, Jørgen Vig Knudstorp, who was willing to do something incredibly difficult. He chose the totally unglamorous path of tearing things down. Step 1. He ordered a radical simplification, slashing the number of unique parts from 13,000 down to 7,000, just cutting almost half the complexity out of the operation in one brutal move. Step 2. He sold off the theme parks, which were honestly the clearest physical symbol of their decade-long wandering. And step 3, he redirected the company's attention, capital, and identity squarely back to its founding product, the plastic brick. These were counterintuitive, structurally painful, but absolutely necessary moves to save the business. It's the exact kind of strategy that looks completely reckless right up until the moment it works.
But here's the thing. They didn't just cut, they strategically rebuilt. Instead of launching totally unrelated product categories from scratch again, LEGO turned to smart licensing partnerships. They secured deals with massive, beloved franchises like Star Wars, and eventually produced their own film, the LEGO Movie. These strategic partnerships put the core brick right at the center of stories millions of people already loved. It extended their reach and amplified their product without ever losing focus on their core identity.
And the sheer scale of the victory that followed, it was unprecedented. Between 2004 and 2014, revenue experienced a massive 4 times growth multiplier, a 4x jump. The strategy of relentless focus, cutting distractions, and using smart partnerships yielded undeniable success. Through this absolutely ruthless focus, the company that had been counting down to total collapse transformed into the largest toy company in the entire world.
So, how do we synthesize all of this? Section 4. Lessons from the rebuild. Some universal truths. Because these corporate strategies apply as quiet, universal truths for almost any endeavor. And I want to clearly walk through these final takeaways with you. First, doing less but doing it better can drastically outperform trying to do everything. Second, crisis can be a really powerful catalyst. I mean, it took an $800 million debt to force the hard cuts that should have happened years earlier. Third, stay true to what made you valuable. The original brick from 1932 is exactly what saved them 70 years later. Fourth, cutting your losses, even really painful ones, like selling off the theme parks, can save the whole enterprise. And finally, strong partnerships amplify a strong product, but they can never replace one. The Star Wars deal only worked because the core brick business was rebuilt underneath it to support it. Doing one thing extraordinarily well completely outperformed trying to do everything.
Which brings us to a final provocative thought I want to leave you with. Where in your own life, or maybe your business, are you experiencing a decade of drift? Because none of this incredible recovery happens if LEGO chose comfort over the hard, honest path of admitting their mistakes. Sometimes the biggest turnarounds start with embracing hard honesty, tearing down what isn't working, and getting back to the one thing you do better than anyone else. Brick by brick. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. If you want to keep exploring fascinating frameworks and incredible rebuilds just like this one, make sure to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.